Hey guys, in this video we will be creating UI layouts. This is part 2 of the video. Part 1 focused more on the theory, and this one will be focusing on using that theory to actually create the layouts and just see how those configuration properties that we described in part 1 work in action. If you're watching this on YouTube, you will see a link in the upper right corner to watch part 1. I highly recommend it because that's where the core knowledge comes from that we shared on the building blocks of the UI layouts. The very first thing are going to be components. There are two components that are used to create layouts. One of them is container, the other is block. We'll start with the container, drag it out into the page. A container by default comes with one row, and that row has one cell. You can drag and drop multiple additional rows and cells into your page, but for now one is going to be sufficient. So for the demo purposes, I have one cell. I will replicate it, so there are two cells now. And the very first thing that I wanted to show you is assignment of the width. Something to keep in mind that a row in the container has 12 positions, and then the width is allocated by taking up those spots. So a single cell may contain a fraction of 1/12 through 12/12 as far as the actual positions that the row consists. So this cell will have the width of 3/12, and then this cell will have the width of 9/12. So this way, both cells make up 12/12, which is the full width of the row. This cell will contain an image. Let me drag one into here. And this image will have a... And in this image, I will display a picture. Let me just put the URL into here. So here's the picture. And I want this picture to stretch and take all available space. So select the image. And then in the width, we can put 100%. So now it looks pretty good. Let's see how it is actually rendered right now with what we already have. So this is exactly what I had in mind. Very good. Now the same page, when it's rendered for tablet, will have this layout. And for phone, it's going to be this layout. The cool thing about the container component and how cells are allocated spots in that row, you can control and allocate different widths to cells depending whether it's rendered in a desktop, tablet, or phone. So for instance, if we switch to the tablet layout, let's say that we want to have those cells located on separate lines within that row. So select this cell and say it's going to be full width, and now select the second cell and specify full width as well. So now the layout is different while the components are exactly the same. Any logic you assign to them, it is going to be exactly the same. Any decorations such as borders, shadows, they're all going to be exactly the same between desktop and a tablet. But the layout as far as the width, it is going to be different. And you can go back and forth and see exactly how it is going to be laid out. And you can repeat exactly the same thing with the phone rendering. What you need to keep in mind is that a single row on desktop has 12 positions, 12 elements that make up the width. On tablet, there are 8 of them, and on the phone, there are 4. And whenever you switch between desktop, tablet, and phone, and you go select a cell, and you go into the width, you see that here there are 8 width positions that the cell can stretch out to. Okay, so that's important as far as the form factor. While we're here, let's also take a look at the margins and padding. So select the cell that contains the image, and then scroll down to the bottom in the properties, and you will see there is margin and there is padding section. So for instance, for that cell, we can specify margin to be, for instance, 20 pixels in every direction. So as you can see, this is our row, and then the cell in that row has those margins that we specified. Select the cell again, and now let's say the padding will be 20 pixels in every direction. So as we specify padding, it pushes the child that is inside of the cell in, and then the margins, they stretch all the neighbors out. So that's the practical purpose of margin and padding. Okay, so that's what it is as far as the actual container. Now let's take a look at blocks. Remove that container and we will add the block. Now that we have the block, we can start seeing the effect of the Flexbox layout. And in here in this block, let me add a few other components such as image. In fact, I will add a couple of images because it's going to be very easy to see how the Flexbox layout works. So there are 3 images, and for each image I will add the actual picture, just so we have graphical differentiation between individual children of that block. So there are 3 images. As you can see, the images are sticking to each other. This can be corrected simply by selecting an image and adding some bottom margin for this one and also for this one. Notice that the images are located top to bottom. If we select the actual block and go to the direction, you see that the top to bottom is the default direction. You can change this simply by changing it to left to right, or right to left, or bottom to top. Justify controls how the child components are justified. By clicking on these options, you can see exactly the effect. And for instance, if we change the direction and click on justify, then you can see exactly how the justify option works. It works not with every direction. So for instance, if we select top to bottom, then justify doesn't really do a whole lot. But if we select this one or this one, then it makes a lot of difference. Item alignment is right here. Once again, you can, since 2 images are the same size and one is different, then you can see the effect that it has as far as the alignment of the child components. What's important to understand is that here I use the images as the child components of my block. Exactly the same thing that I have demonstrated with direction, justify, align, padding, margins, exactly the same thing would be applicable to any child component, regardless what they are located inside of the block. So for instance, if I remove these images and I add something more complex such as panel. So here's panel 1, and let me replicate these panels. So there are 3 panels inside of my block. If I were to change the direction for my block that contains these panels, then you see it applies that layout to all the child components of my block. The next thing that I would like to do is to demonstrate how these layout tools and configuration and properties can be applied to something that is already done in the form of page templates. To do this, I will create a new page. And now we made a change where you can actually see the layout of the individual templates. So for instance, we will select this business front page. Let's call this my business page and select business front page template. Now in here there is already a bunch of components and they are all nicely laid out, and this is a good way to study how the layout rules are applied to achieve this particular effect. So in here, something that is I find quite interesting, and first of all let me run this page so you see what it looks like once it is rendered. So in here you see that the header is sort of sticking to the top and then the rest is scrollable. And this is accomplished exactly by using these elementary building blocks that I have been reviewing with you in part 1 and now in part 2. Let me demonstrate how this particular effect is achieved. First of all, from the structure of the page, if we switch to the tree, notice that at the very top we have main component, and that main is a block, and then the main consists of 2 childs. So one of them is nav panel, and nav panel is this area in black, and the second one is called workspace, and this is everything down here. So that's the workspace. Let's take a look at the height of main panel. So the main panel height is set to 100%. So which means that it will take up the entire height of the page. The nav panel is sitting right here, and it doesn't really have any special properties. It is really just exactly the block as it comes from the toolbox. The next thing is going to be the workspace. So this workspace, let's take a look at this right here. What's interesting about workspace is it uses this flex grow, and the flex grow is set to 1. And what this does is it stretches out this particular block, because workspace is a block, it stretches it out to take all available space. As a result, what happens is in our tree, if we take a look, main consists of two child components. Workspace has flex grow set to 1. Nav panel, I don't think it has any flex grow. Yeah, flex grow is empty. And this creates this amazing effect where the workspace area takes up all available space and it is scrollable. Something else to enable this scrolling, select workspace. See, the overflow is set to auto. Let's take a look at the overflow for main. For main, overflow is hidden. So what this means is that anything that doesn't fit on the page is not shown. And when you have this combination of settings, when this workflow is being scrolled up, that becomes the overflow and it's hidden. That's why it doesn't overlap this particular header. We can accomplish the same thing with the footer, because right now the footer is at the bottom of the workspace. So let's take a look at the footer, select it, and then take a look in the tree. So this is the footer, and as you can see, it is inside of the workspace. If we take this footer outside of the workspace to be located in main, and we can do it just by simply dragging it out here, then what we have is the header and the footer are sticking to their position. Main consists of 3 child components. Take a look at main. It has this top to bottom navigation, and now by rendering it in the browser, we have header and footer sticking to the top and the bottom of the page, and then everything else inside is scrollable. This is the best way to actually learn how to structure these components. So for instance, in here we have a container that consists of 1 row. Let's take a look at this container, and this is row-services is going to be that row, and that row will consist of multiple cells. So in fact, this is going to be cell 1, cell 2, 3, and 4. So as you can see, here's the cells being laid out in the row. When you switch between tablet and phone, there are also some things that are happening that are being adjusted with the layout, and I highly recommend to study how it is done in this particular template or the page created from this template, as well as a few others. So for instance, another one that we could create, it is called shop homepage. So let's call this my shop page. Select this guy right here, create the page. And now this is a somewhat different layout where you have the menu on one side and you have the details on the other side. It changes somewhat when you switch between tablet and the phone. And once again, the same basic rules that we had. So for instance, select one, switch to the tree, and inside of the tree you can actually see how it is structured. So we have here 2 cells. You see this is the cell for the menu, and then this is the cell for all the content, and they are inside of the container. So this is the container, the whole area, and then that container is sitting inside of the workspace. And then the page is structured where there is main, which is the block that stretches out over the entire page. That main area contains header, and then contains the workspace, and then from the workspace it starts kind of breaking down into individual components. So this is the general approach: is you lay out the structure of your page, start breaking it down into the containers, into blocks, into rows, into cells, and then once you have drawn it out on a maybe piece of paper or schematically somewhere in the system, then start mapping it inside of the UI builder. It looks fairly simple. Of course, there are certain things that may seem unclear and you're uncertain how to achieve certain effect. Guys, we're there to help you out. Please contact us on support, contact us on Slack, and we'll be more than happy to assist you. support.backendless.com is the forum where we provide all the assistance for all technical questions. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you found this useful. And as always, happy codeless coding.